Thus spoke Nietzsche, a journey through his life and philosophy. Prepared and presented by Eric Johnson. Chapter 1. Introduction. Becoming who you are. Before we embark on this intellectual journey, let us pause for a moment and consider the goal of this biography. Unlike conventional narratives that unfold chronologically, our exploration into the life and philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche will unfold conceptually. Each chapter will represent a significant stage or idea in Nietzsche's life, accompanied by his remarkable quotes. We seek not just to narrate a series of events, but to breathe life into Nietzsche's philosophy, connecting his thoughts with his lived experiences. Now, let us meet Friedrich Nietzsche himself, through one of his most famous quotes: "Become who you are." On first reading, this aphorism seems almost like a paradox. How does one become who they are? Are we not already who we are? Yet, in this simple, enigmatic phrase, Nietzsche encapsulates one of his central philosophical tenets: the eternal process of self-overcoming and self-realization. Friedrich Nietzsche was born into a deeply religious family in 1844. The loss of his father, a Lutheran pastor, at a young age had a profound impact on him, and would later influence his critique of religion. His early brilliance was noticed by his teachers, and he was appointed as a professor of classical philology at the University of Basel at the tender age of 24. However, a series of health issues led him to retire early, paving the way for his full immersion into philosophy. The rest, as they say, is history. Yet, who was Friedrich Nietzsche really? He was a man of contrasts and paradoxes, an influential philosopher who spent his last years in insanity, a critic of morality who lived a largely solitary and ascetic life, and a fervent anti-nationalist who was posthumously co-opted by the Nazis. To understand Nietzsche, we must see him as he saw himself, as an individual continually striving to overcome himself, to transcend his circumstances, to create his own values. This is the Nietzsche we will explore in this biography, a man who, in his quest to become who he was, radically transformed our understanding of who we could become. In the following chapters, we will traverse through Nietzsche's life, his philosophy, and his legacy, always remembering his exhortation to become who you are. We will see how Nietzsche himself lived this mantra, continually striving to overcome himself and forge his own path. As we delve deeper into Nietzsche's life and works, we invite you, the reader, to embark on your own journey of self-discovery and self-overcoming. With each turn of the page, we hope to shed new light on the enigmatic figure that is Friedrich Nietzsche, a man who not only shaped the course of philosophical thought, but who also continues to inspire us to strive, to struggle, and to become who we are. Chapter 2. The Birth of a Philosopher. The narrative of Friedrich Nietzsche, one of the most provocative and influential philosophers in history, begins in the quaint, rural landscape of Rocken, a small village in Prussia. Here, on October 15, 1844, Friedrich Wilhelm Nietzsche was born into a lineage that was deeply embedded in Lutheran faith. The date of his birth coincided with the birthday of King Friedrich Wilhelm IV of Prussia, whom Nietzsche was named after. This seemingly trivial coincidence was perhaps the first of many unconventional intersections that would characterize Nietzsche's life. His father, Karl Ludwig Nietzsche, a Lutheran pastor respected for his wisdom and piety, and his mother, Franziska Oehler Nietzsche, a dedicated wife and mother, provided a deeply religious framework for young Nietzsche's upbringing. The family also included his younger sister, Elizabeth, and brother, Ludwig Joseph. The family's life, deeply rooted in their faith, was set in the picturesque parsonage of Rocken, an environment that was as tranquil as it was insular. However, Nietzsche's idyllic childhood was abruptly disrupted when tragedy struck. His father succumbed to a brain ailment when Nietzsche was only 5, and his younger brother passed away a year later. These early experiences of profound loss perhaps initiated Nietzsche into the tragic sensibility that would later become a core theme of his philosophical outlook. The quote, "That which does not kill us makes us stronger," seems almost like a premonition of his own resilience in the face of personal tragedy. In the absence of his father and brother, Nietzsche was surrounded by a strong matriarchal influence, living in a household comprised of his mother, his sister, his paternal grandmother, and 2 unmarried aunts. His sister, Elizabeth, was a significant figure throughout his life. Their relationship was multifaceted, marked by deep affection but also ideological conflict, particularly as Elizabeth later assumed control over Nietzsche's literary estate and controversially curated his public image. In spite of his early encounters with mortality, or perhaps because of them, Nietzsche displayed exceptional intellectual prowess from a young age. His educational journey began at home under the tutelage of his mother and aunts before moving on to a local school in Naumburg. His extraordinary talent and promise as a student earned him a scholarship at the prestigious Schulpforta School when he was 14. At Schulpforta, Nietzsche was exposed to a broad curriculum, but it was the classics that captivated his intellectual curiosity. The depth and rigor of his classical studies, which included Latin and Greek language and literature, shaped Nietzsche's thought profoundly. The influence of the ancient world can be traced throughout his philosophical career, from his early fascination with Greek tragedy to his later conceptualization of the Dionysian as a vital life force. In this academically stimulating environment, Nietzsche's philosophical sensibilities began to germinate. Immersed in the works of the ancient philosophers, he started questioning the religious convictions he was raised with. This philosophical questioning marked a turning point in his intellectual development and hinted at the iconoclastic thinker Nietzsche would become. Entering university marked the beginning of Nietzsche's intellectual independence. His move away from theology and towards philology demonstrated the early formation of a radical thinker, willing to diverge from traditional paths and expectations. His decision was indicative of a deeper shift occurring within Nietzsche. It was a shedding of inherited beliefs and an embrace of independent inquiry that would form the crux of his future philosophical pursuits. His years at the University of Bonn and later at the University of Leipzig were a period of intense intellectual activity and exploration for Nietzsche. His academic prowess did not go unnoticed. His professor of classical philology at Leipzig, Friedrich Wilhelm Rischel, was highly impressed by Nietzsche's abilities, stating that in his 40 years of teaching he had never had a student like him. While at university, Nietzsche came across Arthur Schopenhauer's The World as Will and Representation, an encounter that would shape his philosophical trajectory. The impact of this seminal work on Nietzsche was profound and immediate. Schopenhauer's portrayal of the world as driven by a ceaseless, irrational will resonated deeply with Nietzsche. He found in Schopenhauer a philosophical outlook that was markedly different from the optimistic tenor of his time. It was a philosophy that acknowledged suffering and disillusionment as inherent aspects of human existence. This period of Nietzsche's life also saw the cultivation of his musical abilities. Inspired by Richard Wagner's music, which he had come to know and admire through his friend, composer Karl von Gersdorff, Nietzsche began composing his own pieces. Wagner's music, like Schopenhauer's philosophy, resonated with Nietzsche's growing recognition of the darker, irrational forces at play in human life. The Birth of a Philosopher is a story of formation and transformation. It sketches the early life of a man who was to become one of the most provocative thinkers of his time. It charts the path of an extraordinary mind shaped by personal tragedy, classical education, intellectual rebellion, and a profound engagement with art and philosophy. It traces the formation of a philosopher who, having experienced life's highs and lows from a tender age, learned not only to endure them but to use them as a source of creative and philosophical inspiration. In doing so, it pays homage to Nietzsche's quote, "That which does not kill us makes us stronger." This chapter shows how Nietzsche, a son of a Lutheran pastor, turned his early personal tragedy into the very soil from which his philosophical ideas would grow and flourish. Chapter 3. Into the academic arena. The years following Friedrich Nietzsche's departure from his theological studies saw him entering the intellectual sphere as a professor of classical philology at the University of Basel, Switzerland, a position he assumed at the tender age of 24. His appointment, being extraordinary due to his young age, attested to his prodigious intellect and signaled a promising academic career. The chapter at Basel that started in 1869 was an intensely active and transformative phase in Nietzsche's life, one that witnessed his intellectual metamorphosis from a philologist to a philosopher. Nietzsche's tenure at Basel marked a revolutionary approach to the teaching of classical philology. He wasn't merely a teacher but an intellectual provocateur who breathed life into the ancient texts he discussed. His lectures were not confined to the pedantic analysis of languages. Instead, they served as a portal to the rich tapestry of ancient cultures, enabling his students to experience the intellectual and spiritual vitality of the bygone era. He often emphasized that philology, for him, was not just an academic discipline but an integral part of the humanistic tradition that could bridge the past and the present. Outside the academic halls, Nietzsche's life was deeply impacted by a friendship that would prove to be a pivotal influence in his intellectual development: his relationship with the celebrated composer Richard Wagner. The two were introduced by Nietzsche's friend and fellow philologist, Erwin Rohde. The bond that developed between Nietzsche and Wagner was based on their mutual interests, a shared appreciation for Schopenhauer's philosophy and a deep concern for the revival of Greek tragedy. This relationship with Wagner significantly shaped Nietzsche's early thought. Nietzsche saw in Wagner's music a compelling exemplification of his own theory of the Apollonian and Dionysian duality, inspired by Greek tragedy. The intoxicating and visceral power of Wagner's music moved Nietzsche profoundly. He famously declared, "Without music, life would be a mistake." This sentiment reflects not only Nietzsche's appreciation for Wagner's compositions but also his deep-seated conviction about the indispensable role of art in human existence. Yet, the relationship between Nietzsche and Wagner was not devoid of complexities. Over time, differences in their philosophical perspectives and personal disagreements cast a shadow over their friendship. Their eventual estrangement was marked by Nietzsche's growing disillusionment with Wagner's increasingly nationalistic and anti-Semitic tendencies and his critique of Wagner's final opera, Parsifal. However, the intellectual and artistic influence that Wagner had on Nietzsche remained significant, permeating his philosophy of art and culture. Despite their eventual falling out, Nietzsche's engagement with Wagner's music continued to reverberate in his subsequent writings and thought. While Nietzsche was establishing himself as a distinguished academic and navigating his complex friendship with Wagner, he was also grappling with persistent health problems. He suffered from severe migraines, stomach ailments, and vision problems, which frequently disrupted his academic duties. His fragile health, unfortunately, led to his premature retirement from academia in 1879. Upon his exit from academia, Nietzsche embarked on a decade-long period of nomadic existence, wandering across Switzerland, France, and Italy while writing prolifically. His ill health forced him out of the traditional academic world, but it also opened up a new phase of intense philosophical creation that would see him producing some of his most celebrated works. Yet, the seeds of Nietzsche's later philosophical accomplishments were sown during his academic years at Basel. It was here that he first began to question and challenge the traditional moral and philosophical doctrines that underpinned Western thought, setting the stage for his later radical critiques of religion, morality, and culture. Despite his struggles and conflicts, both intellectual and personal, Nietzsche's years at Basel were not marked by despair but by an insatiable thirst for knowledge and a relentless commitment to his philosophical vision. Nietzsche's life during this period embodies his philosophy of affirmation and becoming. Despite the odds stacked against him, Nietzsche continued to affirm life and strive to become who he truly was: a philosopher dedicated to the task of reevaluating values and affirming life in all its complexity and contradictions. As we delve further into Nietzsche's life, the third chapter, Into the Academic Arena, presents Nietzsche as a compelling figure whose life and work were deeply intertwined. It illuminates Nietzsche's relentless commitment to his intellectual pursuits, his enduring resilience in the face of adversity, and his unwavering belief in the power of art and culture. It showcases a man who, despite his physical frailties, remained intellectually robust, challenging the academic and philosophical norms of his time, and paving the way for a new way of thinking about life, art, and culture. Through this chapter, we witness the beginnings of Nietzsche's profound engagement with the fundamental questions of human existence. It provides us with a glimpse into the intellectual journey of a man who would go on to become one of the most influential philosophers of the modern world. It shows us Nietzsche not just as a scholar, but as a man of passion, integrity, and relentless courage who dared to think differently and, in doing so, transformed the landscape of philosophy. Chapter 4. Health, Hardship, and the Dawn of Philosophy. Nietzsche's resignation from his role at the University of Basel in 1879 due to deteriorating health signaled a significant turning point in his life. He was just 34, and yet, the promising academic career that had begun so extraordinarily was over. The constant struggle against debilitating illnesses, including severe migraines, persistent stomach problems, and a slowly failing eyesight, had extracted a heavy toll. But Nietzsche's personal hardships, in stark contrast to his physical predicament, became the furnace that forged his philosophical outlook. The phrase, "He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow," beautifully encapsulates Nietzsche's own approach to the physical adversities he endured. His why was his unyielding commitment to philosophical explorations. Nietzsche, with an almost defiant perseverance, turned the harsh reality of his suffering into the reason and motivation to deepen his understanding of life, its challenges, and its worth. His personal agony was not a confining barrier. Instead, it became a profound source of insight, feeding his intellectual fervor rather than quelling it. With his resignation from academia, Nietzsche chose an existence often described as nomadic. He moved between various locations in Switzerland, Italy, and France, living in boarding houses and rented rooms, seeking climates that would ease his physical ailments. The loss of a fixed abode and a regular income indeed imposed constraints. Yet, this solitary, wandering lifestyle afforded him the mental space necessary to examine, critique, and redefine the foundational ideas of morality, truth, and existence. This nomadic existence became a fertile ground for Nietzsche's creative intellectual life. His decade of wandering was marked by astonishing intellectual productivity. From the solitude of his rooms, Nietzsche created works that were destined to disrupt conventional thought profoundly. Thus spoke Zarathustra, Beyond Good and Evil, On the Genealogy of Morality, and The Gay Science, emerged during this period. These seminal texts, while revealing the deep imprints of his personal struggles, showcase Nietzsche's audacious philosophical explorations. They bear testimony to his unwavering commitment to probe the prevailing moral structures, to unmask the hidden biases in accepted truths, and to expose the arbitrariness underlying conventional notions of good and evil. Nietzsche's philosophical endeavors during this phase were inseparable from his lived experiences. His intense personal experiences of suffering and despair informed and enriched his philosophical insights. Nietzsche's prolonged affliction compelled him to engage deeply with the concept of suffering. His insights led him to perceive suffering not as a mere negative facet of life to be avoided or annihilated, but as a crucial aspect of life itself, holding potential for profound self-overcoming. His philosophy of embracing life in its totality, including its most painful facets, became a key theme in his work. Nietzsche advocated a radical revaluation of suffering, presenting it not as a detriment but as a powerful impetus for personal growth and cultural creativity. Following his resignation, Nietzsche embarked on the most prolific period of his writing career. The solitude and freedom that came with his new nomadic lifestyle allowed Nietzsche's philosophical ideas to flourish. He began to write with a new vigor and intensity, producing works that were remarkable in their depth and originality. His physical ailments, far from hindering his intellectual pursuits, seemed to fuel them. In his works from this period, Nietzsche critiqued the foundations of traditional morality, argued for the re-evaluation of values, and introduced novel concepts such as the will to power, the eternal recurrence, and the Übermensch. These ideas would not only revolutionize philosophy but also significantly influence various fields, including psychology, literature, and the arts. Nietzsche's writings from this period also reveal a profound understanding of the human condition. His reflections on suffering, morality, and the meaning of life present a nuanced exploration of the complexities and contradictions of human existence. Nietzsche's philosophy offers a rich tapestry of insights into the human experience, illuminating the depths and heights of what it means to be human. In conclusion, Chapter 4, Health, Hardship, and the Dawn of Philosophy, offers an in-depth exploration of a transformative period in Nietzsche's life. It provides a glimpse into Nietzsche's personal struggles, his intellectual journey, and the philosophical ideas that emerged from this critical juncture. By closely examining Nietzsche's life and work during this period, we gain a deeper understanding of Nietzsche's philosophy and its enduring relevance to contemporary discussions about life, suffering, and meaning. The chapter shows that Nietzsche's philosophy was not an abstract discourse disconnected from life, but a lived philosophy, shaped and informed by his personal experiences. It presents Nietzsche as a man of extraordinary resilience, who, in the face of physical suffering and personal hardship, produced some of the most profound and influential ideas in the history of philosophy. This chapter not only adds to our understanding of Nietzsche as a philosopher but also illuminates the man behind the philosophy, offering a vivid portrayal of his courage, resilience, and unwavering dedication to the pursuit of truth. Chapter 5. Overcoming Morality. This chapter delves deeper into the heart of Friedrich Nietzsche's philosophy, centered on two of his most groundbreaking works, Thus Spoke Zarathustra and Beyond Good and Evil. Through these masterpieces, Nietzsche embarks on a profound critique of conventional morality, paving the way towards a vision of human potential that surpasses traditional conceptions of good and evil. Thus Spoke Zarathustra is a work of remarkable complexity and depth, presenting a transformative philosophical vision couched in a poetic and often cryptic style. It is here that Nietzsche introduces one of his most potent and influential ideas, the concept of the Overman or Übermensch. The Overman signifies the highest potential of human life, an idealized figure that embodies self-mastery, self-creation, and a resounding affirmation of this world. In this work, Nietzsche profoundly states, "Man is something that shall be overcome." This sentence encapsulates his vision of human potential, inviting us to transcend our current condition to realize our highest possibilities. The Overman is not a fixed ideal but an ongoing project, a continual overcoming of oneself in the pursuit of self-transformation. However, this journey towards self-overcoming is not devoid of its challenges. Nietzsche recognizes the hold of traditional morality on human life, viewing it as an obstacle to the realization of the Overman. He critiques morality for its tendency to suppress our instincts, curb our vitality, and limit our potential under the guise of humility, selflessness, and ascetic ideals. In Beyond Good and Evil, Nietzsche continues his critique of morality, dissecting its origins, implications, and biases. He boldly calls for a revaluation of all values, advocating for a new kind of morality that is affirmative and life-enhancing rather than restrictive and life-denying. Nietzsche portrays conventional morality as an artifact of herd mentality that fails to recognize the diversity and dynamism of human life. His critique aims at dismantling such constricting moral frameworks and replacing them with a more nuanced understanding of human existence. Nietzsche's philosophical journey is marked by a commitment to unmask the hidden assumptions underlying traditional morality. He dismantles the metaphysical foundations of morality, challenging its pretensions to universality and objectivity. Nietzsche exposes morality as a product of historical, cultural, and psychological conditions, thereby revealing its inherent relativity. Nietzsche's critique of morality culminates in his concept of will to power. He proposes this as a fundamental principle of life, driving all human actions and desires. Nietzsche envisages the will to power as an affirmative force that celebrates life in its fullness and complexity, rather than a destructive force that seeks domination over others. Nietzsche's philosophy, as outlined in Thus Spoke Zarathustra and Beyond Good and Evil, is a daring exploration of the human condition. It offers a profound critique of established moralities, invites a radical revaluation of values, and envisions a new kind of human being, the Overman. His philosophy is a call to break free from the shackles of tradition, to affirm life in its totality, and to strive towards the creation of self-defined values. In conclusion, this chapter titled Overcoming Morality presents a nuanced understanding of Nietzsche's philosophy, highlighting the radicality of his thought and its lasting relevance. It presents a comprehensive exploration of Nietzsche's critique of morality and his vision of the Overman, illuminating the depth, complexity, and transformative potential of his philosophical thought. Through a detailed examination of Nietzsche's seminal works, we gain a deeper understanding of his unique philosophical outlook and its enduring impact on the world. Chapter 6. The Will to Power. Friedrich Nietzsche's philosophy, steeped in profound and provocative insights, challenged the foundational notions of his contemporary Western thought. Central to his philosophical oeuvre are the controversial concepts of the will to power and eternal recurrence. Furthermore, Nietzsche's critique of Christianity, culminating in his powerful proclamation of the death of God, marked a radical shift in understanding morality, life, and human potential. This chapter explores these significant facets of Nietzsche's philosophy, underlining their interconnectedness, implications, and enduring influence. The will to power, as Nietzsche conceived it, is an omnipresent force that permeates all life forms. Contrary to the simplistic interpretation of it as the desire for domination over others, Nietzsche's will to power encompasses a much broader spectrum. It symbolizes a dynamic force propelling all beings towards self-realization and self-overcoming. It's the creative energy that gives rise to art, science, philosophy, and all human achievements. The will to power is not merely a struggle for survival but a striving for growth, mastery, and self-affirmation. Nietzsche perceived the will to power as a counter-concept to Darwin's theory of survival of the fittest. For Nietzsche, life was not a struggle for existence but a struggle for power. He proposed that the will to power was a more accurate descriptor of human behavior, arguing that humans seek not only to preserve their life but also to enhance it, to exert their will, and to express their individuality. Closely tied to the will to power is Nietzsche's conception of eternal recurrence, an idea that emerged later in his career. The concept of eternal recurrence is a thought experiment that invites us to contemplate the idea of our life recurring an infinite number of times, in every minute detail. Nietzsche regarded this concept as the highest formula of life affirmation. The idea challenges us to live each moment as if it would recur eternally, prompting a radical embrace of life with all its triumphs, trials, and tribulations. While the eternal recurrence may seem daunting, Nietzsche presents it as an opportunity for profound self-realization. If we affirm the eternal recurrence of our lives, we affirm life itself in its entirety, without regret or resentment. For Nietzsche, such complete affirmation of life is the highest expression of the will to power. Turning to Nietzsche's critique of Christianity and his proclamation of the death of God, we find another significant facet of his philosophy. For Nietzsche, the belief in a transcendental world and an absolute moral law led to a devaluation of earthly existence and a denial of life's inherent dynamism and diversity. The death of God, as Nietzsche conceived it, is not a literal death but a cultural shift signifying the declining influence of Christian morality and metaphysical beliefs. One of Nietzsche's most enduring legacies is his insistence on the radical freedom and responsibility of individuals in creating their own values and meaning. This becomes particularly crucial in the wake of the death of God. Nietzsche propounds the need for individuals to recognize their creative power, to understand themselves as value-creating beings. In a world devoid of prescribed, universally accepted values, the task of value creation falls upon the individual. It is here that the will to power finds its ultimate expression, in the creation of one's values, in the shaping of one's life, and in the overcoming of oneself. Nietzsche's philosophy doesn't offer us comforting certainties or easy answers. Instead, it confronts us with profound challenges, difficult questions, and radical possibilities. It urges us to affirm life in all its complexity and ambiguity, to engage with the world in its diversity and dynamism, and to recognize and realize our potentialities. His philosophy is not a doctrine to be passively accepted but a provocation to think, to question, and to create. It is essential to note that Nietzsche's thought has been subjected to various interpretations, some of them controversial. His ideas have been associated with nihilism, relativism, and even fascism. However, a careful and nuanced reading of Nietzsche reveals a philosophy that resists simplistic categorizations. While his critique of traditional values is relentless, his philosophy is not a descent into nihilism but a call to overcome it. While he emphasizes the relativity of values, he does not espouse a crude relativism but underlines the creative responsibility of individuals in shaping their values. And while he critiques the herd mentality and the mediocrity of mass culture, his vision of the overman is not a justification for domination but an aspiration for self-overcoming and self-creation. In conclusion, this chapter, The Will to Power, provides a comprehensive exploration of some of the most significant and challenging aspects of Nietzsche's philosophy. It presents a detailed analysis of his concepts of the will to power, the eternal recurrence, and the death of God, highlighting their interconnections, implications, and enduring relevance. Through this exploration, we gain a deeper understanding of Nietzsche's philosophical vision, its transformative potential, and its lasting influence. The chapter invites us not only to understand Nietzsche's thought but also to engage with it, to grapple with its challenges, and to reflect upon its relevance for our lives. Chapter 7. Descent into Madness. Friedrich Nietzsche's life, much like his philosophy, was characterized by dramatic turns and tragic intensity. The final years of his active life were marred by a rapid descent into madness, which has been a subject of speculation, controversy, and sadness. At the same time, the posthumous handling of his works by his sister, Elizabeth Forster Nietzsche, significantly influenced Nietzsche's legacy. This chapter aims to illuminate this turbulent period in Nietzsche's life and its implications for his philosophical heritage. In the last decade of the 19th century, Nietzsche, despite his declining health, produced some of his most influential works, including Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Beyond Good and Evil, and On the Genealogy of Morals. These works were filled with radical philosophical ideas, potent critiques of morality and religion, and bold affirmations of life. Nietzsche, himself, recognized the explosive potential of his thought, aptly stating, "I am not a man, I am dynamite." However, Nietzsche's intellectual dynamism was increasingly shadowed by his deteriorating mental and physical health. His eyesight was failing, his migraines were becoming more severe, and he was suffering from various other ailments. The man who had once affirmed, "That which does not kill us makes us stronger," was now caught in a relentless struggle with his own frailty. Nietzsche's rapid descent into madness began in earnest on January 3, 1889. While in Turin, he experienced a mental breakdown upon witnessing the flogging of a horse. He threw his arms around the horse's neck to protect it and then collapsed to the ground. In the days that followed, he penned a series of madness letters, filled with delusional claims and bizarre statements. Within a few weeks, Nietzsche became entirely non-responsive, retreating into a silence that would last for the remaining 11 years of his life. Nietzsche's madness is often attributed to tertiary syphilis, a diagnosis popular in his time. However, modern scholarship tends to challenge this view. Alternative theories suggest that his mental collapse was due to a brain tumor or a hereditary mental condition. Despite these hypotheses, the precise cause of Nietzsche's madness remains a mystery, adding yet another layer of enigma to his complex persona. The period following Nietzsche's mental collapse marks a controversial chapter in his legacy, primarily due to the role played by his sister, Elizabeth Forster Nietzsche. A fervent nationalist and anti-Semite, Elizabeth took control of Nietzsche's unpublished works and correspondence. She re-edited and rearranged his writings to align with her ideological leanings, severely distorting Nietzsche's philosophical thought. Nietzsche, a vehement critic of nationalism and anti-Semitism, was thus posthumously misappropriated by his sister to serve the very ideologies he despised. Elizabeth's machinations had profound implications. Her edited version of Nietzsche's works, titled The Will to Power, was widely circulated and accepted as Nietzsche's magnum opus, contributing to the misinterpretation and misuse of his philosophy. Nietzsche's thought, already subject to controversy, was further marred by these distortions, leading to erroneous associations with fascism and Nazi ideology. In conclusion, the final years of Nietzsche's life and the subsequent handling of his works underscore the tragic and controversial aspects of his biography. His descent into madness, the mystery surrounding its cause, and the posthumous distortion of his philosophy all contribute to the complexity of his legacy. Despite these challenges, Nietzsche's philosophy continues to inspire, provoke, and challenge us, affirming his self-proclamation, "I am not a man, I am dynamite." As we navigate through the distortions and controversies, we find in Nietzsche's thought a potent critique of established values, a radical affirmation of life, and a call for creative self-overcoming. Chapter 8. Nietzsche's Legacy. Despite the controversies that marked his life and the distortions that marred his posthumous legacy, Friedrich Nietzsche has undeniably left an indelible imprint on the world of thought and culture. His influence extends far beyond academic philosophy, permeating literature, psychology, theology, cultural criticism, and popular culture. This chapter, Nietzsche's Legacy, aims to explore this enduring influence, shedding light on how Nietzsche's thought continues to resonate, challenge, and inspire. Nietzsche's philosophy represents a radical critique of established values and a potent affirmation of life. His bold assertions, "God is dead, there are no facts, only interpretations, become who you are," have become part of our cultural lexicon, reflecting his far-reaching impact. These provocative statements continue to resonate, prompting us to question our assumptions, values, and beliefs. In philosophy, Nietzsche has been a significant influence on existentialism, postmodernism, and post-structuralism. His critique of metaphysics, morality, and religion has been instrumental in shaping these philosophical movements. Nietzsche's emphasis on interpretation, perspectivism, and the will to power has deeply influenced thinkers like Martin Heidegger, Jean-Paul Sartre, Jacques Derrida, and Michel Foucault. In psychology, Nietzsche's insights have inspired the works of Carl Jung, Alfred Adler, and Rollo May. His concept of the will to power and his critique of morality have shaped the theories of these psychologists. Additionally, his notion of eternal recurrence can be seen as a precursor to the existential concept of living authentically. Nietzsche's influence is also discernible in literature and the arts. His provocative ideas, lyrical style, and tragic life have inspired a host of writers, poets, filmmakers, and artists. From Thomas Mann and André Gide to Hermann Hesse and Albert Camus, from Stanley Kubrick and Terrence Malick to David Bowie and Bob Dylan, Nietzsche's influence is pervasive. In popular culture, Nietzsche's thought has been variously interpreted and appropriated. His quotes adorn T-shirts, his ideas feature in films and TV shows, and his image appears in memes and street art. While these appropriations often simplify or distort Nietzsche's philosophy, they also testify to his cultural significance and popular appeal. At the same time, Nietzsche's legacy is not without its challenges. His thought has been associated with nihilism, relativism, and fascism, often due to misunderstandings or misinterpretations. While Nietzsche critiqued morality and religion, he did not espouse nihilism but sought to overcome it. While he stressed the relativity of values, he did not advocate a crude relativism but emphasized the creative responsibility of individuals. And while his sister misappropriated his philosophy for nationalist and anti-Semitic purposes, Nietzsche himself was a critic of these ideologies. In conclusion, Nietzsche's legacy offers a comprehensive exploration of Nietzsche's enduring influence and its multifaceted manifestations. Despite the controversies and misunderstandings, Nietzsche's thought continues to resonate, challenge, and inspire. His philosophy, a potent critique of established values and a radical affirmation of life, remains as relevant and provocative as ever. As we engage with Nietzsche's legacy, we are invited not only to understand his thought but also to reflect upon its significance for our lives and our world.